In the vast, unforgiving waters of the Bering Sea, there are stories that even the most battle-hardened sailors struggle to explain. This is one of those stories, a tale that began with a simple act of kindness, but soon evolved into a mystery so profound it would challenge everything we thought we knew about the connection between humans and wild animals. What unfolded aboard the fishing vessel Ocean's Pride would not only save a life, but would also become one of the most baffling and deeply moving cases of animal behavior ever documented. The story begins on a crisp spring morning when the Bering Sea, usually a tumultuous and unpredictable expanse, had fallen into an eerie, almost unnatural calm, the kind of quiet that sets the stage for the extraordinary. Captain James Carter, a third-generation fisherman who'd seen more than his fair share of dangerous waters, later described the atmosphere as one that foretells the unexpected, the kind of silence that comes just before something unimaginable. With 30 years at sea, Captain Carter had never felt this kind of tension hanging in the air. As the Ocean's Pride moved through the water, hauling in the day's catch, First Mate Emily Harper glanced out over the water and did a double take. Her eyes widened in disbelief. A massive brown bear was swimming toward them, but it wasn't the distance the bear had covered that was so shocking. It was the way it swam. Unlike other wild animals in distress who panic and thrash around in the water, this bear seemed to be staying perfectly still. Its head was held high, eyes locked firmly on the ship, tracking its every movement. It wasn't flailing, it wasn't lost. It was waiting, as if expecting something. But what? The crew's unease grew as they watched the bear move deliberately in the direction of the boat. They could see something in its eyes, something that was more than simple fear. There was a sharp intelligence, a deep recognition of its surroundings. As it swam closer, the bear raised its paw from the water in a gesture that was eerily human, like a silent plea for help. Captain Carter, a man of logic and reason, had heard countless stories over the years of wild animals behaving in unexpected ways, but he had always chalked them up to exaggeration. Until now, he couldn't deny what he was witnessing. The look in the bear's eyes was not just the desperation of an animal in danger. It was an unmistakable signal that this bear wanted something. It was reaching out in a way that seemed almost too intelligent for its species. It was as if it knew they were there to help. As the Ocean's Pride crew readied themselves for a rescue, the behavior of the bear became even more inexplicable. Most wild animals in distress, when approached, become more aggressive, more defensive. But not this bear. The closer the crew got, the calmer it seemed. Its labored breathing began to fall into a steady rhythm, as though it was pacing itself for what was coming next. It was as though the bear had made the conscious decision to conserve its energy, knowing that help was on the way. Oliver Stone, the ship's engineer, worked quickly to modify their largest fishing net, but every few moments his eyes would flick back to the bear. It was watching them, not in the frantic way you might expect from a cornered animal, but with clear focus, almost as though the bear knew exactly what they were doing and was calculating its next move. Its gaze was unwavering, locked on the crew as they gathered the necessary equipment to bring it aboard. The crew's tension mounted. This wasn't just an animal in need of rescue. It was an animal that seemed to understand the very process of rescue. The bear wasn't just a creature of instinct. It seemed almost sentient, aware of its predicament and the efforts being made to save it. As the crew of the Ocean's Pride prepared for their first rescue attempt, something truly extraordinary began to unfold. They could see the bear's exhaustion. It was struggling to stay afloat, its massive body swaying slightly in the water. But the most surprising part was that it was doing something no one had ever expected. As they maneuvered the boat closer to its location, the bear's behavior remained deliberate and calm, even though they were closing the gap between them. This was no panic-stricken animal. It wasn't splashing around or thrashing in fear. Instead, it moved with purpose, turning its head slightly, as if acknowledging the effort they were making to help. When the crew finally positioned the large net, they were prepared for the worst. A panicked, violent animal fighting for survival. But instead, the bear's response was unnervingly controlled. It didn't lash out in terror. Instead, it rolled gently to its side, making it easier for them to slide the net underneath its massive body. It was as if the bear was doing everything it could to cooperate, not fight against them. Emily Harper, who had spent years working with marine mammals, stood frozen in awe. This wasn't just a bear in distress. It was a bear that understood what they were trying to do. It wasn't just acting on instinct. It was acting with intent. As the crew successfully hoisted the bear from the water and onto the deck, a silence fell over the ship. Everyone stood motionless, watching the bear's every move. Its eyes scanned the faces of each crew member, locking on to them one by one, as though trying to communicate with them on a level that transcended animal instinct. Captain Carter, a seasoned fisherman who had spent decades on the sea, later wrote in his log that he had never experienced anything like it. He had seen wild animals, but he had never seen an animal like this. Something about its gaze, so focused, so deliberate, told him that he wasn't simply in the presence of a wild creature in need of help. He was in the presence of something far more extraordinary. At first, everyone expected chaos once the bear was on board. It was a wild animal, after all, and the crew braced themselves for the inevitable. But instead, the bear did something that no one had ever seen before. It sat down, lowering its heavy body gracefully onto the deck, and placed one large paw over its chest, in what could only be interpreted as a gesture of gratitude. It then extended its paw toward Captain Carter in a deliberate, almost human-like manner, offering thanks to the one who had rescued it. The crew, stunned into silence, could hardly process what was happening. This wasn't a typical animal reaction. It was something far deeper. It was as if the bear understood, on a level they could not explain, the kindness that had been extended to it. And then, something even more remarkable happened. As the ship's crew continued to move about, going about their duties, the bear did something that no one could have predicted. When Liam Brooks, one of the crew members, lost his footing on the wet deck and began to slide toward the railing, the bear did something extraordinary. Moving with surprising grace, it stepped forward, positioning itself between Liam and the edge of the deck. It stopped Liam's fall, its powerful frame acting as a barrier. When Liam regained his balance, the bear stepped back, allowing him to continue. It was as if the bear had done the one thing no one could have expected. It had saved a human life, without hesitation, without a second thought. It was as if it instinctively understood the situation and had made a choice to help. Over the course of the day, the bear continued to display behavior that left the crew speechless. When the ship's engine began to sputter and make unusual noises, the bear guided Oliver Stone, the engineer, directly to the source of the problem. The bear pawed insistently at a particular spot on the deck, leading them to a damaged fuel line. The crew had missed it, but the bear seemed to sense the vibrations, feeling the subtle mechanical hums beneath the surface of the ship. As the day wore on, the Ocean's Pride was caught in a powerful storm. The waves crashed over the ship's deck, threatening to damage equipment and throw the crew off balance. But the bear, once again, did the unthinkable. It began to work alongside the crew, using its strength to help secure loose equipment that might have otherwise been tossed into the sea. During a brief lull in the storm, something truly miraculous happened. The bear approached a container of fresh water that the crew had left on the deck. Instead of drinking it immediately, it did something that left them all in awe. It carefully pushed the container toward each crew member, making sure they all had a chance to drink before it took its own share. This wasn't simply a display of intelligence. It was a profound demonstration of empathy, a deep understanding of the needs of others. The crew, once wary of the wild animal that had been rescued, now found themselves moved beyond words by its actions. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and purple, the bear performed an act that would cement its place in the crew's hearts forever. It began gathering small fish from the day's catch and tossing them into the air, one by one, to the seabirds that had been following their boat. This wasn't random behavior. This was deliberate. The bear was sharing food, demonstrating a level of compassion that no one thought possible for a wild animal. The crew stood there slack-jawed and silent as they watched the bear, who had once been a symbol of danger and raw, untamed power, become something entirely different, a symbol of kindness, intelligence, and cooperation. As the Ocean's Pride continued its journey back to shore, the crew could feel the weight of the day pressing on them. They had just witnessed something so extraordinary that it seemed almost too surreal to process. They had rescued a bear, but what had followed, the bear's almost human-like behavior, its understanding of the crew's actions, its acts of kindness, was beyond anything any of them could have anticipated. However, the most extraordinary moment of the day was yet to come. As the crew lowered the ramp to release the bear, something even more extraordinary occurred. The bear stopped halfway down the ramp, turned around, and returned to the deck. It went back to the place where it had been rescued and picked up the small piece of wood that it had carved. With a purposeful motion, it placed the carved piece into Captain Carter's hands, as if to remind them of the bond they had created. Before leaving, the bear did something that sealed this moment in the crew's hearts forever. It stood upright at the edge of the ramp, facing the crew, and placed its paw over its heart. It held the position for a full minute, as if to say a final goodbye. Then, just as the sun began to set behind it, the bear raised both paws in the air in what could only be described as a wave of gratitude, of farewell, of recognition for the humans who had saved its life. And with that, the bear turned and disappeared into the forest, leaving the crew of the Ocean's Pride standing on the deck in stunned silence. They had just witnessed something that no one would believe unless they had been there themselves. A wild animal, not only saved by human hands, but returning the favor in ways that defied logic and expectation. But the story wasn't over yet. The crew of the Ocean's Pride had no idea that what they had just witnessed was only the beginning of a series of events that would leave them and the world speechless. Over the next few days, something extraordinary happened that would once again challenge everything they thought they knew about animals and their behavior. 3 days after releasing the bear, as the Ocean's Pride sailed back to its usual fishing grounds, something unexpected appeared on the horizon. It was their bear, but it wasn't alone. Behind it swam a procession of animals that seemed to honor the bear's incredible journey. Orcas swam in perfect formation, creating an almost ceremonial procession in the water. Seabirds flew overhead, weaving in organized patterns. And, most incredibly, 2 other bears, also rescued from similar situations, swam alongside the first, as if following the bear's lead. The sight was surreal. The crew could hardly believe their eyes. It was as though the bear had become a leader, not only among its own kind, but among other species as well. It was as if the rescued bear was guiding these animals, teaching them what it had learned from its time with the crew. It was leading them toward a future where humans and animals could work together, where compassion was shared and reciprocated. As the procession approached the Ocean's Pride, the bear and its companions began to perform a series of gestures. They worked in perfect synchrony, just like the crew had during the rescue. It was as though the bear had not only remembered their actions, but had passed on that memory to the other creatures, teaching them how to cooperate, how to work together in harmony. The crew, still stunned from the days of unbelievable behavior they had witnessed, stood together as the bear and its companions approached. The bear swam toward the ship, and once again performed a gesture of gratitude. This time, however, it came bearing gifts, perfectly chosen seashells, each one carefully collected and held in its mouth. And what made the gift even more extraordinary was that each shell matched the color of the clothing each crew member had worn during the rescue. What began as an act of compassion, a simple rescue of a drowning bear, evolved into something far greater, a profound bond between species, a reminder that the world is far more connected than we can ever truly understand. Over the years, the bear's visits became legendary, a symbol of the extraordinary capacity for empathy, intelligence, and cooperation that exists beyond human comprehension. The crew's simple decision to save a life that fateful day had set in motion a series of events that would forever challenge the boundaries between the natural world and humanity. From that first rescue to the incredible displays of coordination, communication, and compassion, the bear and her fellow creatures showed us that nature's wonders are not bound by the conventional. And as the captain would often say, in the vastness of the sea, we found more than just survival. We found a new way of seeing the world. This story, like so many before it, reminds us that the greatest miracles happen when we reach across the lines that separate us from the natural world. The future is full of possibilities, and if we listen closely enough, nature might just have more to teach us than we ever imagined. Thank you for following the incredible journey of the crew of the Ocean's Pride. Don't forget to subscribe for more heartwarming tales that showcase the wonder of nature, the miracles that unfold when humans and wildlife unite, and the bonds that make our world a little more extraordinary.